Ruby Life Pools returns as one of the dungeons for Mythic Plus in Season 4. This dungeon will start with a 30-minute timer, so as long as you complete the dungeon within that window, you will upgrade your key. Primal Juggernauts will cast Crushing Smash on your tank, dealing massive upfront physical damage. They will also cast Excavating Blast, marking a swirly on the ground and one-shotting anyone caught within it. Make sure to avoid this. Flash Frost Earthshapers have a high danger cast in Tectonic Slam, dealing massive AoE nature damage to anybody within 40 yards. Make sure to stop this with stuns or other hard CC. Flash Frost Chillweavers will cast Ice Bolt at random targets, dealing a chunk of frost damage. Dump Spare Interrupts into this, but make sure you save a kick for their Ice Shield channel. The longer this channel goes on, the bigger the shield will be, but it also makes the shielded target immune to CC, which can end up as a massive problem. Finally, as you walk through this area, be sure not to step on any of the dragon eggs on the edges of the room. Disturbing these eggs will spawn an infused whelp that will occasionally cast Cold Claws, leaving a primal chill debuff on the tank, slowing them until they reach 8 stacks of the debuff, where they will be frozen solid. Avoid spawning multiple whelps here, but the debuff can be dispelled. Before facing the first boss, we'll take on the mini-boss named Defier Dragger. His first cast that you need to watch out for is Steel Barrage. This is a massive tank buster ability, so use active mitigation here. Every time this channel ticks on the tank, it will spawn a molten steel fragment on the ground that the rest of the group will need to dodge. You'll also need to watch out for his Blazing Rush. The Defier will charge a random player, dealing high damage and leaving a 6-second bleed to anybody struck by the charge. Try to bait this charge into a nearby wall to keep uptime on the mob. Now we can face the first boss, Melidrussa Chillworn. Periodically, she will spawn hail bombs on each player, leaving an ice block on the ground. Avoid ever coming into contact with these as they stay active for the rest of the fight. Also, try and bait them close to each other to save space. The boss will occasionally cast Chill Storm on a random player. This will inflict ticking frost damage to the group and extra damage to the player targeted. This player will want to move out from the circle as soon as they are able to, and healers will need to make sure that everybody is healthy before it explodes after 6 seconds. This explosion will also knock back all players, so make sure you're not near any hail bombs. Upon reaching 75 and 45% health, Chillworn will cast Awaken Whelp, spawning a load of whelps from the edges of the room. Tanks be ready to pick up aggro here. After finishing her summon, the boss will enter a Frost Overload, pulsating damage every 2 seconds to all players until you manage to break down her Ice Bulwark and interrupt her. Healers be prepared to heal through the big damage here, and everybody should use their defensives. DPS will want to focus bursting down the shield while passively cleaving down all the whelps so the tank doesn't get frozen solid. After defeating Melidrussa, hop on one of the Radiant Drakes that will take you upstairs. Here we'll find many new mobs, including 2 mini boss drakes. The first one you'll encounter is Thunderhead. Make sure to dodge his Storm Breath frontal cast at all costs. Tanks will need to be wary of his Thunderjaw tank buster, dealing high damage and knocking the tank back. Make sure not to get knocked back into other mobs here. Last but not least, Thunderhead will afflict 2 players with Rolling Thunder, dealing damage every 1 second for 8 seconds, and upon expiring will deal massive damage to all players within 100 yards. Healers should dispel one of these debuffs immediately, then top the group and let the second debuff expire. Flame Gullet is the other mini-boss you'll face upstairs. Again, you'll need to dodge his frontal and Flame Breath. He'll cast Fire Maw on your tank, dealing massive damage and applying a 10-second fire dot. Make sure to use active mitigation here. Finally, once Flame Gullet hits 50% HP, it will cast Molten Blood. This will start taking AoE fire damage on your group every 2 seconds until it dies. The damage is also increased by 80% for every single cast. Here's where you'll need to pop your offensive and defensive cooldowns to burn the mini-boss down. Outside of these 2 mini-bosses, you'll need to defeat 4 Blazebound Destroyers located around the Ruby Overlook in order to activate the next boss, Kokia Blazehoof. These destroyers will cast Living Bomb on a random player, dealing ticking damage and triggering an explosion after 6 seconds. This deals damage to any players caught in it and also knocks them up. Note that it also deals damage to enemies, so you can use it for some free damage and also interrupts on the caster mobs. The destroyers will also cast Inferno, dealing unavoidable AoE damage to everybody within 100 yards, plus leaving a hard-hitting dot for 6 seconds. Make sure you're using your defensives here. Once you defeat the destroyers, they will cast Burnout, dealing lethal damage to anybody caught inside the massive circle, so make sure to run out. Primalist Cinder Weavers will cast Cinderbolt on random players and should be interrupted. You'll want to keep an eye out for their Burning Ambition cast too, causing them to take 25% additional damage but also buffing their haste. If you can handle the extra interrupts and or damage, then let this cast go through and nuke the mob down. Primalist Flame Dancers will cast Flame Dance. You need to stop this ability ASAP using hard CC like stuns. It deals massive AoE ticking damage if successful. Upon the Flame Dancer reaching 0 health, they'll shield themselves with Blaze of Glory, dealing AoE damage to your group and spawning swirlies before killing themselves. The only way to stop this cast is by purging it. Next, we can move on to Kokia Blazehoof. Kokia will cast Ritual of Blaze Binding at a random player's location, so stacking together here will manipulate where the ad spawns. You'll need to immediately nuke down this ad and interrupt its Roaring Blaze cast at all costs. This will deal massive AoE fire damage if you don't. The Firestorm, much like the Blazebound destroyers we already faced, will cast Inferno, dealing party-wide AoE damage, so healers prepare healing cooldowns for the ad phases, and pair this up with defensive cooldowns. After defeating the ad, you'll need to run out from its burnout cast that will also leave a permanent Scorched Earth effect on the ground. Kokia will target a random player with Molten Boulder, which you'll need to sidestep. Failing to do so will deal lethal damage and stun you for 3 seconds, and again, this will leave behind Scorched Earth. Stack up as a group here and try to bait it back through where the Scorched Earth already is. Finally, tanks will need to prepare defenses for the boss's Searing Blows Tank Buster. This will deal big damage over 3 seconds and apply 4 stacks of Searing Wounds, inflicting a 4-second heavy bleed. Upon defeating Kokia, we can head down to the last platform before we take on the last boss. Here you'll find Storm Warriors. They'll cast Thunderclap, damaging all players within 5 yards and reducing their haste by 10%. It also reduces movement speed by 20%. There's not much melee can do to avoid this, but range should make sure to stay out of melee. Primal Thunderclouds cast a Tempest Barrier on themselves, purge this debuff to speed up killing them. Tempest Channelers will cast Lightning Storm, inflicting big AoE damage for 5 seconds, so make sure to use defensives. The Channeler will also spawn new Thunderclouds, so tanks make sure to pick them up and purge them if possible. You'll also need to make sure you interrupt the Channeler's Thunderbolt casts. Flame Channelers will cast Flash Fire at a random player. Make sure to interrupt this cast as it does massive damage to the player, but also heals the Channeler. These mobs will buff themselves with Burning Veins, dealing damage to themselves, but also increasing haste by 50%. So again, if you can handle the extra kicks and damage, you can choose to ignore this buff. Lastly, to activate the last boss, we'll need to take out High Channeler Rivati. You'll need to interrupt her Shock Blast cast on a random player. This deals high damage but also leaves an 8-second nature dot. When she casts Lightning Storm, make sure you use defensives. Tanks should gain threat on the newly spawned Thunderclouds, and finally, you must break the Tempest Storm Shield as fast as you can. Any remaining damage on the Absorb Shield will explode when it expires, dealing damage to all players and leaving a dot on all players struck, likely killing your whole group. This Storm Shield is also buffed in size for each nearby Thundercloud, so make sure to kill these off. Now we can take on the last boss, Kyrakka and Erkhart Stormvein. This is a 2-boss encounter where you'll start by fighting Erkhart. Once he reaches 50% health, Kyrakka will come down permanently and join him, starting the second phase. You'll want to focus down Kyrakka during this fight as he is the more dangerous of the two, so whenever he lands during phase 1, make sure to nuke him down. During this fight, you'll need to dodge Kyrakka's Roaring Fire Breath. Failing to dodge will apply an Inferno Core stack to you. This deals high ticking damage, and whenever it expires, it will leave a flaming embers pool on the ground. Coming into contact with these pools will then apply another stack of Inferno Core, so make sure to avoid them. Erkhart will occasionally cast Interrupting Cloudburst, dealing huge AoE damage to the party, but also interrupting anybody that is casting for 4 seconds. Erkhart will also cast Winds of Change, dealing more AoE damage to everyone, but also applying a pushback effect to everybody, and also the existing Flaming Embers. Make sure to dodge these while they move. During the fight, Kyrakka will target random players with Flame Spit, dealing big upfront damage and also applying an Inferno Core stack. Use a defensive for this ability and try to place the Ember Puddles in a safe spot. Tanks will also have to deal with Erkhart's Storm Slam cast, dealing lethal upfront damage and increasing nature damage taken by 100% for 30 seconds. This stacks and is dispellable, so healers make sure to remove it. But that's it for this encounter, and that wraps up Ruby Life Pools and Mythic Plus. If this guide did help you or a friend out, then please feel free to drop a like down below and subscribe to your boy. And until next time, I'll catch you guys later.